our council meeting underway. I'm chairing this meeting this afternoon because our chairman, Councillor Ponta, has a conflict of interest with this paper. Excuse me. I will open our meeting with a karakia. Whakataka te hau ki te ura, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia makina kina ki uta, kia matara tara ki tai. E hiake ana ti atakura, he tiho, he huka, he hahu, ti he Māori ora. So apologies, we have Councillor Ponta for absence. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Gaylor and Councillor Saw. We've noted Councillor Ponta has a conflict of interest. Is there anybody else in the room that needs to register one? No, and we have no public participation recorded. Now, just before we move on to our main item of business, Councillor Tupua has asked if he could say a few words to acknowledge the passing of John Terrace, who, of course, was a former councillor.
Yeah. Tēnā koe, Madam Chair. I rise to acknowledge the passing of the late the Reverend John Terrace, QSO, who died sadly on the 2nd of February. And to many of us who have been around local government and in the Te Awa Kairangi Lower Hutt community will recall John's service as a Member of Parliament for Western Hutt, as the electorate was known at the time, between 1978 and 1990, and subsequently served as Mayor of Lower Hutt and thereafter as a city councillor. And John was very impactful in his service and his ministry as an Anglican priest. He was passionate about the restoration of the oldest church in Te Awa Kairangi, Christ Church in Taita. And it was always a pleasure to see him advocate for community funding for the restoration project in his regular submissions to council. And also, Madam Chair, his service as the patron of the Hutt Multicultural Council, his desire to see greater empathy and understanding amongst citizens and engaging with each other as we continue to build a peaceable community. John, who I'll always remember as the golden voice of the Hutt, of course has a history in broadcasting, and his service, as Quinton may recall at the service at St James Church yesterday, Madam Chair, where the Honourable Peter Dunn recalled Mr Terrace's work in legislative reform around community safety, such as legislation that brought about the requirement to fence off swimming pools in private residences, as well as the safety around the sale of fireworks at the age of 16, and these are private members' bills that he championed. And also having, after the work that went into MMP, or the electoral system at the time, that he put forward a private member's bill to bring about a referendum. Of course, that wasn't accepted straight away, but years later, a referendum was done, and that is now the current electoral system that we have in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So John, his time in Parliament was impactful, and he was really an advocate for the community, for kotahitanga. He championed through his kōrero and his actions the true partnership with mana whenua, and as councillors Auntie, of course, Auntie Liz Mellish, record that all the work that he did towards the commemoration of Te Tiriti and the building of this nation, of course, at Pitione Beach. And so John leaves a legacy in our community, in our city, and in our nation. Moi mai rā, e te rangatira.
Thank you, Councillor Tupua. Right, on to item 4, our main item of business. Fatima and friends, there's been an enormous amount of work go into this piece, into this paper, as I'm sure councillors all understand. So I will hand over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora koutou. Today's decision is significant because it confirms Council's formal position on reforms that will shape this region's environmental management, our growth and our resilience for decades. Both these bills represent the most significant reform of the resource management system, with implications for our statutory functions, our region, our partnerships with our mana whenua and councils. So today, Council is being asked to agree the substantive content of the submission so it can be lodged ahead of the Select Committee deadline tomorrow at around 4 p.m, I believe. I want to acknowledge and thank the officers across the organisation who have contributed to this work. This has been a genuine cross-organisational effort, drawing on the multiple expertise we have across GW. I want to thank all the officers for their tireless commitment and coming back at the start of the year, very early, to make sure we had a submission that was well evidenced and positioned. It was reading through 735 pages of both bills, and I know some of you have read through all of it. I also want to acknowledge the leadership and partnership of Te Runanga o Toa Rangatira and the mana whenua and council partners who participated in the regional wānanga and hui that informed this submission as well. Richard will cover this briefly in our introduction. I also want to formally acknowledge the Councillor Working Group who have worked alongside us throughout the development of this submission. You came quite early as well to meet with us weekly to provide governance oversight, to test our key positions and help shape the final submissions that you see today. I'll invite these councillors to speak to the submission after the officers have given a brief introduction, and I now hand over to Matt.
Richard. Thank you, Fatima. Thank you, Matt. So, speaking to our process working externally here, there's been three key aspects to it. So, as Fatima mentioned, we've had a series of wānanga hosted by Ngāti Toa at Pātaka Museum up in Porirua, but also one hosted at our office in Marston, a chance to bring together ourselves, the territorial authorities, Wellington Water, and our mana whenua partners to share knowledge, share insights, talk through the implications, coordinate better, work through what it really means for us and how we can work through this both in the submission and also transitioning into the new system. Alongside that, we've had an online portal where we can collaborate outside of wānanga and outside of meetings, again, sharing information, sharing knowledge, sharing insights. And as part of that, there have also been a series of drop-in sessions, all very well attended, again, furthering that opportunity to collaborate and share. In the last week or so, as everybody across the organisations has gotten close to finalising their submissions, we've been sharing our drafts with one another. So we've had an opportunity to see the draft submissions of other councils as well as some of our mana whenua partners, and we've also shared our draft with them, an opportunity to again look for things that have just popped up at the last minute that others have picked up that others may not have. But in terms of our internal process, I'll leave Matt Hickman to speak to that.
Thank you, Richard. The paper itself covers how we've structured ourselves in preparing the submission, including the Councillor Working Group and the Cross GW Officers Group. I think it's fair to say it's been a complete team effort across those two groups. And in particular, we've got many of the officers who've helped prepare that either online or in the room today. The paper seeks your approval of the submission and does delegate minor edits to the Deputy Chair and the Committee Chair of the Environment and Climate Committee, so we can make some minor edits. The submission makes specific suggestions on improvement to both bills, especially around workability, achieving environmental outcomes, and the overarching approach to the treaty and how Māori, iwi, hapu are involved in the whole system, which Carl will briefly cover next.
Kia ora koutou. So consistent with the principles that were agreed in the 11th of December, one of the key focuses alongside the other issues through the reforms is how Te Tiriti Māori rights and interests have been upheld. Within the reforms, broadly the bills undermine the treaty partnership and Māori rights and interests, shifting to more consultation requirements and having regard than the more substantive provisions that have been in the RMA. There's a removal of mechanisms that councils can use for partnering, and even one of the matters that came up during the wānanga that we hadn't spotted is iwi Māori are even excluded from the development of the first set of national direction. So there are lots of specific matters alongside the overall approach. One of the issues also is the practicality of government seeking to delegate responsibility for reinterpreting treaty settlements as part of the implementation. There's a huge practicality issue for as council for our decisions as we progress in those conversations with partners at the same time of implementation, and I suppose consistent with the principle, we've taken a strong stand about what we think will help make the system practical and support the next stage of our journey with partners that we've had over the last couple of decades. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you, team. So we took this council's guidance about making this submission constructive, practical, and really thinking about the implications for local government and regional council to make these bills work. That has sort of framed how we have framed this submission. With that, I can hand over to our councillor working group if they wanted to share any points around this submission as well.
Thank you, Fatima. The members, just to remind everybody, was Councillors Duthie, Elder, Free, Johnston, Makareni, Rhodes, Staples and Wolfe. Now, do any of you wish to add to what has been said already? Councillor Duthie.
I don't wish to dive into the detail of the submission because I think it's a package and it's working really well. But I just want to draw attention and appreciation to the working group and how we as councillors constructively work together, ably advised and in conversation with officers. And it was you don't wake up in the morning feeling excited about joining a Zoom call about RM reform submission, but actually every meeting was enlivening and very positive, and I learnt something at each one, and it was a very good experience. So I just want to thank my colleagues and officers for making that not just not painless, but actually an enjoyable process.
Thank you, Councillor. I need to put my teeth in. Councillor Duthie. Does anybody else wish to comment?
I'd just like to really say that although the report is so well written and obviously has the technical input, that I can see elements in here that do reflect the contributions of the elected members, and I'd just like to say that from my point of view, that's worked really well. I would also like to pay tribute to Shami, is she here? For a huge amount of expertise actually in the Te Tiriti space, which really is quite a big part of the submission. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Free. Councillor Makareni.
I was just simply going to say tautoko, but I don't really want to give myself big ups. But definitely well-deserved big ups because I think that to the rest of you, particularly our officers, in dealing with our hohanas, which I'm an expert at, but incorporating realistically the elements that we did raise is really, appreciated, and explaining when we may have got it wrong and all those sort of things. So huge mahi there. I also want to just acknowledge the collaboration, the kōtahitanga model, and the way that you guys kind of led that out across the region, and the feedback that we've had from other TAs and mana whenua and the other rōpū that you've kind of reached out and supported to be involved in a collaborative process is really, really awesome. It's, and really impactful, I think. Like the government is essentially going to receive a number of submissions that kind of support or feed into the different elements that need to be covered as a region. So huge mihi to all of you and the fellow councillors, and actually all the councillors who supported us to muck in and get alongside and make real hohas of ourselves. So ngā mihi whānau.
Thank you, everybody, for the comments. I think it was a very worthwhile process that we went through. I would just like to, formally acknowledge the team that was fronting it, the four of you sitting here today, as well as all those behind you. What really impressed me the most was that councillors and the team acknowledged that the RMA did need some changes. And instead of coming out, it would have been very easy to be angry and come out fighting, which would not necessarily have achieved what we need to achieve through this process and working through our submission. So I think it's really good that we've been able to find things that we believe will work, and also identify and strengthen our submission around the things that are not good for us or good for our iwi partners or our community as a whole from our point of view. So thank you, everybody. If there's no further comment, are there any questions from other councillors? Other comments? No, there are none. Oh, Councillor Saw.
First off, just want to thank everyone for all their time and commitment for this piece of work. And I've just got a couple of questions, which was one, not being a planner by training or working in the resource management space. I'd just like to sort of lean on your collective wisdom of, or even other councillors, of have we, in your experience, have you ever come across legislative reform in this space that, while there are some really good bits that we do need to reform, that there are many serious and unknown consequences to affordability, our economy, the environment? Have you seen anything like this in your experience before?
That's quite a loaded question.
Just reading the response, there are a lot of unknowns in it. So, and every government change, there is reform, right? So, just in the experience of reform,
I probably I might invite Matt to comment on that, because I was involved in the previous reforms that landed on local government.
Our Chief Executive.
And our CE maybe wants to say that, given his history.
Look, it's a great question. It's a tricky one for staff to answer, and I understand you understand that as well. Look, I mean, I think it is fair to say that the submission in front of you and the changes proposed, it is the biggest change in the RMA since the RMA was implemented. And as you can see with what's happening with RMA Ledge and the change in central government structures around transport and environment, they are trying to align a lot of the system pieces that the country has spoken about for a long time, that to various degrees there's been a perception that they're misaligned and actually causing more challenges around housing growth, transition, environmental outcomes, etc. Than they are providing benefits. So I guess if you're taking the government's perspective, that's what they're trying to do. For us as local government, and particularly with our partnership with Mana Whenua, it is a significant change. But I think, as the Chair said, and a number of you reflected, I think we've all also understood that the system as we currently have also isn't working as well as it might, both for the functions and services we provide as a regional council, predominantly environmentally, but also transport related, in terms of the planning system and efficiency general. But there are undoubtedly things that can change, and I think it's fair to reflect back that Minister Bishop himself said when he launched this that there will be some challenges in this and also some things to iron out, and his invitation for councils such as ourselves to actually go away and put in considered, thoughtful, reflective submissions was probably a genuine one. So I would hope with the mahi that you have done and the team have done here, which has been replicated across all regional councils, in fact all councils across the country, and sector groups such as Te Ora Kahika, such as Local Government New Zealand, etc., will actually be listened to by the Crown, and where there's bits that actually on balance are going to not work or be detrimental in terms of outcomes, they will listen. For some bits, we're actually all saying, well, this is actually not a bad thing and it will help speed the system up. So that is a somewhat long-winded answer to the question, but no doubt this is a significant change. It's a sea change in terms of the direction of travel where the RMA has been going in the past. But on balance, you'd probably have to say it's a pretty good crack, and they have to iron out some wrinkles. We've identified those, and if they can do that, we'll be in a better place than we currently are as it stands.
Thank you, Nigel. I think that probably covers that off. Councillor Saw? Okay. Right, we have some recommendations in front of us. 1 to 3 are noting recommendations. We have 4 as an agreement and 5 as an authorisation. Are council happy that we take them all together? Do I have a mover and a seconder, please, for items 1 to 5? Councillor Duthie and Councillor James. Do either of you wish to speak? Councillor Duthie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not wanting to repeat what I said before. No. My brief comment and debate is to remind ourselves, I guess, that this is a massive overhaul of a legislative system and everything that flows from it, but it's not occurring in a vacuum. It's not just a theoretical change of laws. There is a real world that sits underneath it that this will impact. And I think in the debate around it publicly, the social and the economic context has been quite well spotlighted. The major challenges this country faces in terms of productivity, infrastructure deficits, and just getting more efficient, more beneficial and more enduring with our developments and so on. There's been much less light shone on the environmental context that these laws will land in. And I think I just want to take a moment to remind ourselves that the environment, even just looking at the Wellington region, it's landing in these laws will fit into a biophysical context that is not in great shape. And I want to highlight 2 areas. If you pick up any of our Whaitua reports and you skim through them, you see a lot of red. And red is the colour coding for very poor water quality or declining water quality. That is regulated by the RMA and will be regulated by these bills. So we're already starting from a very diminished health of our environment starting point. If I turn to another area of Indigenous biodiversity, and this is the nature that makes this region such a great place to live in, for Simon to take his photographs in, for businesses to market themselves from, and also makes Aotearoa unique in the world. I just want to quote briefly from a recent Greater Wellington summary report on the state of our region's environment, and it says that a large proportion of the region's resident species that are categorised as regionally threatened, and these include 85% of reptiles, 70% of bird species, 67% of Indigenous fish species, and 22% of Indigenous plants, and the degree to which many Indigenous ecosystems and habitats have been depleted, for example 95% loss of wetland habitat, means that extensive restoration and conservation efforts will be required to shift Indigenous ecosystems and species out of threatened categories. Continued pressures from development and land use, the very things that these systems are designed to regulate and limit the impacts of, continue to undermine restoration and enhancement efforts. So there's a lot hinging on the success of these laws and the implementation of them through national direction and through our role as Regional Council, that they're not just words on paper and a theoretical construction. They are impactful on the real biophysical world of our environment. So I just wanted to take a moment to remind ourselves that that is our challenge, and the government's challenge is to try and make them as best they can be, and I hope that they will be improved at Select Committee and then through national direction and then through the way that we can implement them on the ground to the betterment of the environment of the Wellington region and in the long term, our people, our ratepayers and our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duthie. Councillor James, do you wish to speak?
Don't know how to follow that, to be honest, but I'll try my best. Just really want to again just acknowledge the work that fellow councillors and our excellent staff at Greater Wellington have done. A seriously impressive piece of work, going clause by clause and giving recommendations rather than just saying, no, we don't like it. It's actually being like, hey, here's how you can improve it. Great. Select committee staff love that stuff, and hopefully the MPs will too. So I really just have to commend the paper and our councillors, and I'm sure that'll be a very good agreement on those recommendations. So thanks again.
Thank you, Councillor James. Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Tupou?
Just to, Madam Chair, commend all the members who were involved in the greater part of January, and I'm sure there was much robust discussion amongst councillors towards this, what I think is a comprehensive submission. So thank you to the officers for your work involved in getting us up to select committee. And looking at the principles, you know, I think bipartisanship stands out to me, because there are a number of matters that I personally think should have bipartisan agreement, and on how we manage and regulate the taiao is chief among them. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you. If nobody else wishes to speak, I will be putting the recommendations all together. One, that we're noting that the Environment Select Committee has called for submissions on the Natural Environment Bill and the Planning Bill, noting that the proposed reform represents the largest change to resource management in a generation, noting that this reform is connected to many other pieces of reform impacting local government and regional councils, including simplifying local government draft proposal. We're agreeing to the substantive content of the draft submission as set out in Attachment 1, and we're authorising the Council Deputy Chair and Chair of the Environment and Climate Committee to make minor editorial changes to the submission prior to lodging with the Select Committee. All those in favour say aye. 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 Against? Carried. Thank you, councillors. That brings our meeting to a close. I will close with a karakia. Anuhia, anuhia, anuhia ki te uru tapanui. Ki wātia, ki māma, ti nāko, ti tinana. Te warua I te ara tākata. Koe ra rongo, whakarie ake ke runga, ki tina, huie, tākie. And I believe that we have a workshop after this, so 5 minutes.